Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to be explaining why I make the content that I do, okay? A real reason why I make these YouTube videos, okay? The real reason why I make these kind of YouTube videos, the answer is that I just do it, okay? I really like doing it as a hobby. It's just something that I like to do for fun. Okay? And I want to keep it that way. Now, yes, in the future, I do plan to make, like, money on the side of it or whatever. Like, money on the side, if that's fine, you know. But I'm not going to really make, like, members-only content or do stuff like that. Because basically what you're saying is, you want your information behind a paywall, you know? Like, you want to hide certain subjects from certain people rather than saying, hey, you could actually teach people something, you know? Like, what I'm doing with In Real Life Maxing, you know? Because if you are having a members-only video on In Real Life Maxing, guess fucking what? You failed IRL maxing. Okay? Now maybe members first, but members only, yeah, you probably got something to hide. Okay? You probably got stuff to hide. Now having stuff to hide is fine when you're actually, you know, hiding it so people don't actually know about it. But if you're hiding stuff and people know that you're hiding stuff, then it looks suspicious. You know? It can look very suspicious. That's why if I were to hide stuff, I wouldn't talk about it, you know, I wouldn't mention it, I wouldn't even talk about the fact that I'm hiding it, because if I talk about the fact that I'm hiding it, it would bring acknowledgement to those things. Now, I don't really have anything to hide, you know, I'm not somebody who has actual, like, problems or things that, like, people really shouldn't be knowing. You know, but I do obviously have personal info, personal information. You know, being doxxed is a bad thing as well. That's one of those issues. But outside of that, that's pretty much it. You know, I don't really have anything, you know, to protect. But my relatives do. A lot of my relatives do. So relatives and friends do. And I don't really know what all of them are because of what I just said earlier. You know, there's even things that they probably don't tell about to themselves sometimes, you know? But IRL maxing, that's not something you should really hide or, you know, be afraid, not just in private, but in public, to share. Not necessarily like in the communist way, but I mean in the metaphorical way, in the way where it's like, oh, you can talk about it, oh, you know what it is, or you're aware about it, you know? Like, it's not, like, I'm not trying to scam you here, you know? Like, I'm just trying to get the chronically online to, I guess it's another way of saying it, chronically offline, you know? That's what I'm trying to do with these people. And it's very, very hard to do because, well, people are just, like, they have a really hard time getting offline, you know? Like there are crazy people out there, like, say, look smashers, for example. Now, meth head, what's his name? Clavicular is mostly dominating this movement, okay? Meth head clavicular. Alright? That's what that is. You know, they try to say, oh, I'm fine, oh, I'm good. Same thing with people who are chronically online. They try to say, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, there's nothing problem. If they have one problem, they have many, okay? Because addiction is serious, okay? Now, using the internet in moderation or using it to an appropriate amount based off of who you are or whatever, that's fine. But if you're using it all the time, every day, it's like, why? You know? Like, I get that it's modern times or whatever, but it's like, all the time, every day, you know? Like, you shouldn't really be using it all the time, let alone every day, you know? Because there are some people that, even if they don't ever use the internet every day, they still use it a lot. Like, they still, like, when they do use it, they use it a lot. Because it's just, like, the popular thing to do, unfortunately. And there's nothing really to tell them, hey, you gotta do that. But again, I can only tell you for so long, don't do this, don't do that. Unless you're willing to do it yourself and you actually do the thing I'm telling you to do, you're not gonna go so well, you know? Like, I want you to be able to separate between, your real life and your digital life, you know? Like, I want that to happen for you. And anybody else, really. And, unfortunately, it's not great. But, on the other hand, I do make content targeted towards, you know, helping the chronically online to, you know, not always be online. That kind of thing. Again, I'm not trying to force you here. I'm just simply saying, hey, think for yourself and, you know, help yourself so that way you have the ability to help others. Because what's the point of helping others if you can't even help yourself? You know? Like, you shouldn't abuse your empathy. Doesn't mean you can't have empathy, man or woman. But if you get your empathy abused, all of a sudden, you might be supporting worldviews you might not have attended in supporting, okay? Like, you might support some really nasty criminal and not even realize it, you know? Because, oh, they did a crime that was morally in my range or something. And so because of it, I want them to be free, you know? Despite the fact that this person was committing, say, I don't know, just a random example, robbing a bank, you know? Like, it was all over the news and it was caught and it was confirmed that that person robbed that bank, you know? But there will be these people, especially people in the court system, that will judge it based off of empathy. And the thing about empathy is good outside of the legal system, okay? Empathy can be used for good. But the problem is the actual criminals. You notice how, like, actual people who should be in jail are not in jail? That's because a lot of the criminal court system, they have an empathetic side to criminality, to crimes, you know? Well, criminality, I guess, is another way of saying it. But still, I think you get the idea. These people will use their empathy and think that they're doing a good thing because it feels good, not because it actually is good. You know, like, it makes them feel good, but they're doing evil things, you know? Like, the bad guy doesn't realize that they're bad. They just think that they're the good guy, you know? Like, because it's not like, say, for example, when it comes to historical figures, it's not like Adolf Hitler, for example, thought he was the bad guy. He thought he was the good guy. He legit thought he was the good guy, you know? And there were people who were empathetic towards it, okay? There were people who had those kind of things in their head, you know? And I'm not an expert on that specific, like, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a medical expert. But, you know, that kind of stuff does lead to bad consequences is what I'm trying to say. But I think you get the idea. And I'm not really, it's not really my specialty to really talk about empathy a lot, because that's more of a pro-therapist thing. So, if you're interested into that kind of content, go watch it from, like, say, a professional licensed therapist, or go figure it out in real life with those kind of people. And, yeah, Hopefully what we can do is not just get chronically off online people, offline and become IRL maxers themselves. But the ideal situation is to get the most, and I do mean the most, of the extreme chronically online, those kind of folks, and help them so that way those people, can actually help other, probably even more chronically online people to become IRL maxers as well, because it's basically, you want to get rid of a bad habit, go to somebody who's defeated that habit before, kind of thing. Like you're an alcoholic, for example, or you're a smoker. Well, then talk to professionals who were former alcoholics or former smokers, of how they quit, that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying that the internet is like smoking, necessarily. It can be if you treat it that way, and similar thing about alcohol. But the thing is that when it comes to alcohol, it's more like alcohol, that you gotta take it in moderation, You gotta take it, you gotta know what your moderation is. Now, the internet does have a longer span than alcohol does in terms of, moderation, how to use it. But, here's the thing. You gotta learn how to do that. You gotta go ask people who are sober a lot, or people who are, good at not being an alcoholic, that were probably an alcoholic in one point of their life or another. Or in this case, chronically online. And if you talk to people who are formerly chronically online, a lot of them will say a lot of stuff like, oh yeah, I had pretty much the soul, taken out of me, through the internet and stuff like that. And I can't completely explain it, because you would have to meet these kind of folks. So, there's that as well. Now, I'm not gonna, lie to you. I've been a chronically online person. But the best way to, deal with it, to not be chronically online, and to just be online sometimes, is to not need to be obsessed with anytime you feel bored, anytime you feel wrong, anytime you feel like you have to do sucky ass stuff, or do stuff that doesn't get your attention real well. All this boring, bland, unrelatable stuff. I'm not saying you have to do it all the time, because it's optional on the internet. But in real life, there are just some things that are you're gonna have to do some cringe stuff, eventually. You're probably gonna have to do some lame stuff. You're probably gonna have to do quite a lot of boring stuff. This is why a lot of people have a hard time with, say, relationships, for example, because they found it boring. It wasn't really that it was boring. It was that they're not used to being in an actual relationship. So people try to spice it up, thinking it's gonna work out for whatever they do, in real life or online. And so they just assume that, real life works how it does online. No, it does not. It's a completely different skill set, Yeah, obviously, the internet was invented from the real world, so I think that one is obvious. But the thing is, how should I say? We are not the internet. The only thing you can really have, for sure, most likely, is that you actually have real life. Digital life, the online world, may not always exist, okay? It didn't always used to exist. It's never existed past a certain, era of time, whatever time period you believe that is. But here's the thing. It might not always exist at one point anymore either, meaning that in the future, they might invent technology or say they just might not need the internet anymore, you know? Because right now, we still sort of semi-do in the sense that we need it for, like, to know what's going on in the world and stuff like that or whatever. But, on the other hand, there's a reason why I'm making this video, you know? And I just really like making this kind of content because, well, I really don't really, like, I hate saying this all the time because I sound like a freaking, like, all preachy kind of, but you motherfuckers really need to learn, okay? Like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, I'm not trying to make it, you know, something all complicated sounding, you know, hiding behind the sciencey sounding words. If I said any words, or if anybody says any words you don't understand, especially on the internet, look it up, okay? Look up those words, because they will hide behind those kind of special words to basically just push whatever worldview they're trying to push. And then all of a sudden, you may be agreeing with something that you might not actually believe in, or disagreeing with something you might actually not disagree with. You know? Like, that's what happens a lot online, because they're so radicalized, or they're so extremist, or whatever they have, that as long as it looks like something they agree with or disagree with, they will shift their entire opinion based off of that. All just because they couldn't understand a couple of words, you know? Like, that's how bad it can get. And I do a pretty basic, like, I try to do an unfiltered, and this was unscripted, by the way. There was no script for this. All I did, and what you should normally do if you're making IRL maxing content, is when you make a video, it has to be completely, like not pre-recorded in the sense of edited or anything like that. The only time you should really add editing or whatever to a video is if it's like you're trying to, like, you know, represent what you're talking about. That kind of thing, you know? Like, you're trying to, like, show people whatever you're talking about, you know? Rather it be art, rather it be, you know, video games, rather it be music, rather it be books, movies, TV shows, whatever you're into, sports maybe, pets maybe, whatever. I don't know. I'm not you. Okay? Or even IRL maxing to a certain degree where, yes, you can, but it's not recommended, okay? So, all that I do is I think about a topic that I want to talk about, and I don't script it or anything, again, I'm telling you that right now, but I just really think about something I want to talk about, and then I hit record, and then I just start talking about whatever I want to talk about, you know? Like, that's just how it is, and that's how I've been doing it for a while. That's how I can, you know, talk for like over an hour long, and obviously, you know, it all be in one video, you know? It's not like different cuts over and over and over again, you know? That's just the way things are, you know? Like, I don't have to do all the editing. I don't have to do all this special stuff, you know? Like, you can just straight up, you know, make videos and stuff off of this type of platform where it's just you just talking, you know, talking your mind in the moment. That kind of thing. And anytime I'm speaking in these videos, 99% of the time, unless I'm doing an edited video, which I rarely do, unless it's like YouTube Shorts because it's bullcrap or whatever, and, you know, it's YouTube Shorts. So because of it, editing videos are a lot more fun on there, because edited videos, because it's not as a big deal, you know, because for longer form, then I have a problem with it, because if you're doing like a lot of editing on longer form content, then yeah, you got problems, you know, you got like a situation going on there. And, you know, I've been on YouTube a long time, a long ass time, okay? A lot longer than I would like to admit, okay? I started, a lot longer than this YouTube channel has been around. You know, I started really getting into the YouTube side of the world, you know, pretty much since birth. You know, I was born in 2006, so pushing 20, by the way, time of recording. And, you know, pretty big deal, so to speak. And I never really got exposed to YouTube until, like, 2012, you know? That was when YouTube started to become, like, a really big thing at that time, because of that Gundam-style video. But I don't think I really started to get into YouTube until Rap God, and even then, I didn't really start making YouTube content until 2014. And even then, I didn't have my own content, per se. You know, like, I didn't have my own version of content. I was going off of other people's content, that kind of thing. And then I got, you know, doxxed one time about 10 years ago. And then I got canceled at least like 12 or 20 times, you know, from 2016 to now. Back when being canceled actually meant something. So it was kind of a big deal, you know, and I was kind of big. And the most I have ever gotten on those 2010s channels from that era of YouTube, the most I ever got was however they got, you know, because I was like a part of their channel. I wasn't really making my own content, you know. Like back then I was just going off of whatever they were doing, you know. And I was doing like video game content and stuff like that, and you know, your usual suspects. But at that time, it was just, it is what it was, you know? Like, there wasn't any, like, things really going on in life, you know? And then 2020 happened. And right around then, that's when the whole content thing really started to go on. And back then, I was like a live streamer. You know, like I was really into doing Twitch because that was the only form of content that I really had where I could do it solo. You know? Like that's basically what I was doing back then. And it was like really, really different than it is now. You know? Because Twitch back then, like, you had to just, if you, like, it's still that way today, but, like, back then it was different because they were expecting you to have certain types of video games, say, like, Among Us or whatever, at the time. But me, I just talk shit. And that's where I started really my journey of talking shit. Okay? That's where I've been going. You know? And back then, yeah, I was mostly just a Twitch streamer, and that's what I was, and I so happened to make YouTube content at that time, but, you know, back then, didn't really have the fame or power like I do now, you know. I mean, I was more popular back then, sure, but I did eventually fall off, you know. I did have my fall off era, so to speak, and eventually I stopped using Twitch because, well, it's Twitch, and this was right around the time when, say, the whole cancel culture was starting to become really big on Twitch specifically. And it was already big for many, many years at that point, but this was when it was at its absolute height. So I had to be careful when I was uploading or posting certain types of content because of cancel culture. And it really, really sucked. It was really awful. It was, something that I don't want to ever experience again. And it just is what it was. And so from about 2021 to about 2023, that I would say that was the era of like my original channel, rise and fall. And then eventually the fall started to come down, like 2024, 2025, that was when I started to really fall because I had to go to a separate YouTube channel. And on that separate YouTube channel, at that time, that's when I really started to fall off for a while. It was like a big deal. It was getting really controversial. And then eventually, my second channel that I had from my original channel, because I accidentally deleted the account, but my second channel, or the channel that I had that was my second channel at the time, that account eventually got hacked and deleted, so I couldn't really, at least delete it in the terms of I couldn't really use it anymore. So because of it, I'm just kind of stuck, not having that account anymore. Now, the YouTube channel still technically exists, but it means I can't upload videos or anything like that anymore on that channel. But then I had this YouTube channel about around early April 2025, and right around that time, I still had my older channels, I still had those back then, and I just kind of had this as like a backup channel, and so once this video eventually became the only channel that I really used, and it's not the only channel that I have, but it's the only channel that I publicly use in the sense of making YouTube content. But if my videos were to ever say fall off, or in the sense of somehow this account doesn't exist anymore, what I would be doing is I could always just go to another account. I could always start up a new account, for just in case if this one ever gets banned, or, if something bad happens to it. Because at least then, I can always just restart from the ground up, I can always just remake the content. You know what I mean? I don't have to, when I mean remake, I mean in the sense of, starting that YouTube channel. Which would explain why there are YouTube channels out there that have had their YouTube account out there for years and years and years and years and years, and are just now posting videos, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, I do like posting content on here and stuff like that, and I haven't really had anything big going on, which I probably never really will again because, well, I don't really have to, I'm not gonna go try and get involved in the latest YouTube, Twitch, whatever controversy, because there's always one. Even after you're done, there's always another one that's going on, or another one that will pop up, or another one that ended, that kind of thing. So, it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, I'm going to end this video for now, end this content at the moment. But bye!